They say trust is like a fine watch. Once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. My wife asked for a break to find herself. Then her mom posted vacation photos that shattered everything I believed about our marriage. What I did next with all her belongings left her screaming on the phone, but sometimes a man has to show he won't be played for a fool. Here's how I turned her game against her. My name is LelandCraig. I'm 41 years old, and I own a watch repair shop in downtown Portland, Oregon. Not the kind of place that fixes your average Timex. I specialize in expensive timepieces, vintage collector's items, the kind of watches that cost more than most people's cars. It's a niche business, but it pays well, and there's something satisfying about bringing a beautiful old mechanism back to life. 5 years ago, I was drowning my sorrows at Murphy's Tavern after another relationship went south. That's where I met Velma Ridge. She was sitting at the end of the bar, nursing a whiskey neat and looking like she'd been through hell. Turns out, she had. Fresh divorce, custody battle that didn't go her way, and a 15-year-old son named Corbin who blamed her for breaking up the family. We got talking that night. Both of us were licking our wounds, both tired of being alone. She told me about her ex-husband Orville, how he'd painted her as the villain in their divorce, how her own son could barely look at her. I told her about my string of failed relationships, how I was starting to think I was meant to be alone. Maybe we're both just damaged goods, she said with a bitter laugh. Maybe damaged goods belong together, I replied. For years later, we were married. I thought I found my person, someone who understood what it felt like to start over in your 30s. Velma was beautiful, sharp-witted, and when she smiled, really smiled, it lit up the whole room. She moved into my place above the shop, brought her few possessions, and a whole lot of baggage. The thing about Corbin was complicated. The kid visited every other weekend and some holidays, per the custody agreement. From day one, he looked at me like I was the reason his parents weren't together anymore. Never mind that I met his mother a year after her divorce was finalized. In his mind, I was the interloper, the man who stole his mom away from any chance of reconciliation. He'll come around, Velma always said. But he never did. If anything, he got more hostile as time went on. Barely spoke to me, answered in grunts when I tried to engage him. I tried everything, took him to baseball games, offered to teach him about watches, even bought him an expensive gaming system for Christmas. Nothing worked. The worst part was watching Velma caught in the middle. She'd light up when Corbin visited, desperate to reconnect with her son. But I could see how his coldness tore me hurt her. She never said it outright, but I knew she felt torn between her new life with me and her old life as Corbin's mother. Still, we made it work. Or at least, I thought we did. The first 3 years of our marriage were good. Not perfect, but good enough that I started believing we could make it work long term. Velma had this way of making ordinary moments feel special. She'd bring me coffee in the shop while I worked on a particularly challenging piece, or surprise me with tickets to see a band we both liked. We developed routines, inside jokes, the kind of comfortable intimacy that makes a house feel like home. My buddy Frank from the motorcycle club pulled me aside one evening after our weekly ride. We were having beers at the clubhouse when he said something that stuck with me. "Leland, I gotta ask you something, and don't take this the wrong way," Frank said, setting down his bottle. "But do you ever feel like you're putting more into this marriage than she is?" I laughed it off immediately. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know, man. Just seems like you're always the one making plans, buying gifts, trying to include her kid. When's the last time she planned something special for you?" Frank shrugged. "Maybe I'm seeing things that aren't there. You know her better than I do." But his words bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Was I doing all the heavy lifting in our relationship? I pushed the thought away, telling myself that Frank didn't understand our dynamic. Velma showed love differently than I did. That's all. She was more reserved, less demonstrative. That didn't mean she cared less. Still, I found myself paying closer attention after that conversation. When Corbin visited, I noticed how Velma would almost transform into a different person. She'd laugh louder, touch me less, focus entirely on her son. I understood it. She only got him every other weekend, and she wanted to make the most of that time. But it stung a little, feeling like I became invisible whenever he was around. "He's warming up to you," Velma said one Sunday evening after Corbin had left. We were doing dishes together, falling back into our routine. "Is he?" I asked, genuinely curious, because from where I stood, The kid seemed just as hostile as ever. He asked me if he played any sports in high school, she said. That's progress. It was a small thing, barely worth mentioning, but I held on to it. Maybe Frank was wrong. Maybe I was overthinking things. Velma was trying to bridge the gap between her old life and her new one, and that couldn't be easy. Looking back now, I realize I was so focused on making everyone else comfortable that I stopped paying attention to what I actually needed. I was so determined to be the perfect husband and stepfather that I missed the signs that Velma was already checking out emotionally. The splits were there, small at first. But time has a way of turning hairline fractures into chasms. By our 4th year of marriage, I was ready to take things to the next level. Business was booming. I just landed a contract to service timepieces for 3 high-end jewelry stores in the area. Money wasn't tight anymore, and I started thinking about the future differently. Maybe it was time to expand our family, buy a bigger house, really put down roots. The idea came to me while I was working on a 1952 Patek Philippe that belonged to one of my regular clients. This watch had been passed down through 3 generations, each owner adding their own story to its legacy. I wanted that kind of continuity, that sense of building something that would last. What would you think about us having a kid? I asked Velma one evening over dinner. She nearly choked on her wine. A baby? At our age? Why not? You're 40, not 60. Plenty of women have healthy babies at 40. Velma set down her glass and studied my face. Leland, I already have a child. One who barely tolerates you. In case you haven't noticed. That's different. This would be ours. Something we build together. And what happens when Corbin finds out his mom is having a baby with you? You think that's going to improve your relationship? She had a point, but I wasn't ready to give up on the idea. Maybe it would help. Maybe having a sibling would give him a reason to be around more, to see us as a real family. Velma laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really think a baby is going to solve our problems with Corbin? I think it's worth considering. Well, I don't. I'm done having babies, Leland. That chapter of my life is closed. The conversation ended there, but it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Was Velma really done with that chapter, or was she just done with the idea of having a child with me? I tried to push the thought away, but it lingered. A few weeks later, I suggested we visit her parents for Thanksgiving. We'd only been there once since our wedding, and I thought it might be good for us to reconnect with her family. Plus, I was curious about where she came from, what shaped her into the woman I married. They'll love the idea, Velma said when I brought it up. Mom's been asking when we're coming for another visit. As the date approached, I found myself looking forward to the trip. Maybe spending time with her family would help me understand Velma better. Maybe it would bring us closer together. I should have trusted my instincts when Frank warned me about putting more effort into the relationship than I was getting back. But hope can make a man blind to the obvious, and I was nothing if not hopeful. The drive to Salem took 3 hours, winding through Oregon's beautiful countryside. Velma seemed more relaxed than she'd been in months, humming along to the radio and pointing out landmarks from her childhood. For the first time in a while, things felt easy between us. Her parents, Harold and Donna Ridge, lived in a modest ranch house on the outskirts of town. Harold was a retired postal worker, soft-spoken but friendly enough. Donna was more outgoing, the kind of woman who hugged you whether you wanted it or not and insisted on feeding you the moment you walked through the door. Leland, Donna exclaimed when we arrived. You look wonderful. Marriage agrees with you. Harold shook my hand firmly and helped me carry our bags inside. Good to see you again, son. How's the watch business? Can't complain, I replied. Staying busy. The house was warm and comfortable, filled with family photos and the smell of something delicious cooking in the oven. I noticed several pictures of Corbin on the mantel, including a few that looked recent. There were also older photos of Velma and Orville from their wedding day, which struck me as odd, but not necessarily concerning. Dinner was pleasant enough. Harold asked about my work, seemed genuinely interested in the craftsmanship involved in watch repair. Donna fussed over both of us, making sure our glasses never went empty and our plates were always full. Corbin's doing well in school, Donna mentioned during dessert. Orville says he's thinking about applying to Oregon State. That's great, I said, though I noticed Velma tense slightly at the mention of her ex-husband. He's such a good father, Donna continued. Always putting Corbin first, you know? Some men just have that natural instinct. Velma kicked her mother under the table, not subtly enough that I didn't notice. How is Orville doing? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, he's wonderful, Donna beamed. Just got promoted to department head at the school district. He's doing so well for himself. Again, Velma shot her mother a warning look. But Donna either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. Later that evening, while Velma was helping her mother in the kitchen, Harold and I sat on the back porch with beers. I hope you don't mind Donna going on about Orville, Harold said quietly. She always liked him. Had a hard time accepting the divorce. Understand, I replied, though I wasn't sure I did. For what it's worth, I think you're good for Velma. She seems happier than she's been in years. His words should have reassured me, but something in his tone suggested there was more he wasn't saying. The weekend passed without incident, but I left Salem with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite shake. The change in Velma started almost immediately after we got back from Salem. At first, I thought she was just tired from the trip or maybe coming down with something. But as the days turned into a week, then 2 weeks, it became clear that something fundamental had shifted. She'd always been a morning person, usually up before me making coffee and checking her phone. But now she'd stay in bed until the last possible minute, then rush through her morning routine without saying much of anything. Our usual breakfast conversations disappeared entirely. Everything okay? I asked one morning as she hurried past me toward the door. Fine, she replied without stopping. Just running late. But she wasn't running late. I could see her sitting in her car in the driveway for several minutes before actually leaving for work. She was avoiding me, and we both knew it. The evenings were worse. Velma would come home from her job at the insurance office and immediately retreat to the bathroom for long showers. When she finally emerged, she claimed to be tired and want to watch TV. But she wasn't really watching. She was scrolling through her phone, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. Who are you texting? I asked one night, trying to keep my voice casual. Just my sister, she said without looking up. But I knew Velma's sister lived in Phoenix and rarely texted. They talked maybe once a month, if that. Our physical intimacy, which had never been passionate but was at least regular, dried up completely. When I tried to initiate anything, Velma would claim a headache or say she was too tired. The few times I pressed the issue, she'd snap at me with an irritation that seemed disproportionate to the situation. What's gotten into you lately? I asked one evening after she'd rebuffed my attempt at a simple goodnight kiss. Nothing's gotten into me, Leland, she said, her voice sharp. I'm just not in the mood all the time like you are. It's been 3 weeks. Oh, so now you're keeping count. That's romantic. The sarcasm in her voice was new, and I didn't like it. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my bad jokes and bring me sandwiches while I worked late in the shop. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I'd closed the shop early and picked up Chinese takeout from our favorite restaurant, thinking maybe a nice dinner might help us reconnect. When I got home, Velma was on the phone in the bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her voice through the thin walls, but couldn't make out the words. What I could hear was the tone, softer than she'd spoken to me in weeks, almost intimate. When she finally came out 20 minutes later, she looked startled to see me sitting at the kitchen table with the food containers. Oh, you're home early, she said. Thought we could have dinner together. Like we used to. Velma glanced back toward the bedroom, then at me. That's sweet, but I'm not really hungry. Who were you talking to? My mom. She's having some issues with Dad. Another lie. I'd spoken to Harold just 2 days before when he called about a watch repair recommendation. He'd mentioned that everything was fine at home. The conversation I'd been dreading finally happened on a rainy Saturday morning in March. I was in the shop working on a vintage Omega when Velma appeared in the doorway, still in her robe and slippers. She looked like she hadn't slept much, dark circles under her eyes, and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Leland, we need to talk, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I set down my tools and turned to face her. Okay, what's on your mind? She wrapped her robe tighter around herself and took a deep breath. I think I need some time to figure things out. Figure what things out? Us. Me. I don't know. Everything feels complicated right now. I leaned against the workbench, studying her face. Complicated how? I just feel lost lately. Like I don't know who I am anymore or what I want. Velma's voice began to shake slightly. I need a break, Leland. Some space to think. What kind of break? I want to go stay with my parents for a while, just until I can sort through some things. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I try to keep my voice steady. For how long? I don't know. A few weeks, maybe longer. And I think it would be better if we didn't talk during that time. No contact. I need to clear my head without any outside influence. No contact. Those words echoed in my mind as I processed what she was saying. My wife of 4 years wanted to disappear from my life completely, with no timeline for when or if she'd come back. Is there someone else? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop myself. Velma's eyes flashed with something, anger, guilt, I couldn't tell which. This isn't about anyone else, Leland. This is about me needing space to figure myself out. That doesn't answer my question. There's no one else, she said firmly. I just need time to think about what I want from life. Please respect that. Every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong, that this sudden need for space was about more than just soul-searching. But looking at her standing there in the doorway, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her, I found myself nodding. If that's what you need, I said quietly. Thank you, she whispered, relief evident in her voice. I'll pack some things and leave this afternoon. Velma, I called as she turned to go. Are we going to be okay? She paused without turning around. I hope so, Leland. I really hope so. But something in her tone told me she'd already made up her mind about us. The break wasn't about figuring things out. It was about ending things without having to say the words out loud. 3 hours later, she was gone, and I was alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. For the first week after Velma left, I threw myself into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I rebuilt 3 vintage pocket watches from the ground up, cataloged my entire inventory, and even reorganized my tool collection. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from wandering to dark places. Frank stopped by the shop on Thursday evening, bringing beer and the kind of no-nonsense friendship I had desperately needed. You look like hell, he said, settling into the chair I kept for customers. Thanks for the pep talk, I replied, not looking up from the Rolex I was servicing. When's the last time you ate a real meal? I had to think about it. Tuesday, maybe. Frank shook his head and pulled out his phone. I'm ordering pizza, and you're going to eat it. While we waited for the food, Frank didn't push me to talk about Velma. Instead, he told me about his latest motorcycle restoration project, the drama at his construction job, normal guy stuff that helped me feel human again. It wasn't until we were halfway through the pizza that he brought up what we were both thinking about. You hear from her at all? Frank asked. No. No contact means no contact, apparently. That's some serious commitment to finding herself, he said, making air quotes. Most people can figure themselves out without going completely dark. I set down my slice and leaned back in my chair. You think I'm an idiot for letting her go? I think you're a good man who married a woman with more baggage than you realized, Frank replied. Question is, what are you going to do about it? That night, after Frank left, I found myself staring at my phone. Velma's social media accounts had gone quiet since she left. No posts, no updates, nothing. But curiosity got the better of me, and I started scrolling through her connections, looking for clues about what she might be doing. That's when I found her mother's Facebook page. Donna Ridge was one of those people who documented every meal, every outing, every random thought that crossed her mind. Usually, her posts were harmless enough. Pictures of her garden, complaints about the weather, shares of inspirational quotes. But Monday evening, she posted something that made my blood run cold. It was a photo album titled Family Spring Break, Lake Tahoe. The first few pictures were innocent enough. Scenic mountain views, the family cabin, Harold grilling on the deck. But then I saw her, Velma, looking happier than she'd looked in months, standing on a dock with her arms around a man I recognized immediately. Orville, her ex-husband. There were multiple photos of them together, hiking, sitting around a campfire, sharing what looked like an intimate conversation over dinner. In every single picture, they looked comfortable together, familiar in a way that spoke of shared history and ongoing connection. But what really gut-punched me was the last photo in the album. Velma, Orville, and Corbin standing together on the shore of the lake, the teenager's arms around both his parents. They looked like a family. They looked like they belonged together. The caption read, "So wonderful to have the whole family together again. Some things are meant to be. Hashtag blessed, hashtag family time, hashtag second chances." I stared at that photo for a long time, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't Velma taking time to figure herself out. This was Velma reconnecting with her ex-husband, while her current husband sat at home, wondering what he'd done wrong. My hands were shaking as I screenshotted the photos, some primal instinct telling me I might need evidence later. Then I closed the laptop and sat in my empty house, finally understanding the magnitude of what was really happening. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop, staring at those Facebook photos on my phone screen and trying to figure out my next move. Part of me wanted to call Velma immediately, confront her with what I'd found, demand an explanation. But a larger part of me, the part that Frank's advice had awakened, knew that would be a mistake. She'd asked for no contact, claimed she needed space to figure herself out. Well, she was getting exactly what she'd asked for. But so was I. By dawn, I made my decision. I spent the morning going through our bedroom, the bathroom, the closets, every space where Velma had left pieces of herself. Her clothes, her jewelry, her books, her collection of scented candles that I'd never understood but tolerated because they made her happy. All of it went into boxes. I wasn't angry as I packed her things. I wasn't even particularly sad anymore. I was methodical, efficient, treating it like any other job that needed to be done right. Each item got wrapped carefully, sorted by category, labeled clearly. If she wanted to play house with her ex-husband, she'd need her belongings. The hardest part was finding the engagement ring I'd given her 4 years ago. She'd left it on the nightstand with her wedding band, and seeing those 2 rings sitting there felt like a slap in the face. But I wrapped them carefully in tissue paper and put them in a small box with her other jewelry. By afternoon, I had everything packed and ready to go. 6 large boxes and 2 suitcases containing 4 years of shared life. It was both more and less than I'd expected. I drove to the UPS store and paid extra for signature confirmation and tracking. I wanted Velma to have to sign for this delivery personally. I wanted her to understand that I knew exactly what was going on. The shipping address was Harold and Donna Ridge's house in Salem. No need to guess where she might be staying. I'd seen the family photos. Heavy shipment. The clerk commented as he processed the boxes. Moving. I replied simply. That's exciting. New job. New life. As I drove home from the shipping store, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Relief. For the first time since Velma had asked for her break, I felt like I was taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. She wanted space. She'd get all the space she needed. She wanted to figure herself out. She could do it without any of the reminders of our life together cluttering up her parents' house. She wanted to reconnect with her ex-husband. She could do it knowing that her current husband wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to decide between her past and her present. I'd given her exactly what she'd asked for. The question now was what she'd do when she realized I meant it. My phone was already in my hand when I pulled into my driveway, Velma's contact information on the screen. But I didn't call. She'd asked for no contact, and I was going to respect that request right up until the moment she broke it herself. The delivery was scheduled for tomorrow morning. After that, the ball would be in her court. But something told me the game was already over. The call came exactly 36 hours after the delivery confirmation email. I was working on a complicated Breitling repair when my phone rang, Velma's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, wanting to make sure my voice would be steady. "Hello, Velma," I said calmly. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed, her voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Why did you send all my stuff? Are you completely insane?" "You said you needed space to figure yourself out," I replied, keeping my tone level. "I thought you might need your belongings while you're doing that. This is crazy, Leland. If you wanted me gone, you could have just said so instead of humiliating me like this." I almost laughed at the irony. She was talking about humiliation while playing happy family with her ex-husband for her mother's Facebook audience. "I'm not the one who should be feeling humiliated here," I said quietly. There was a pause on her end, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, cautious, like she was starting to realize I knew more than she'd assumed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I hope you enjoyed your family reunion at Lake Tahoe." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and how she was going to explain it away. "Leland, I can explain." "No need," I interrupted. The pictures explained everything perfectly. You, Orville, and Corbin looking like the happy family you apparently always wanted to be. "It wasn't what it looked like," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Really? Because it looked like my wife was on vacation with her ex-husband while telling me she needed space to figure herself out. It looked like you were testing the waters to see if you could go back to your old life without having to deal with the messy business of actually ending your current one. You don't understand, Velma said, and now she was crying. Corbin begged me to come. He said his dad wanted to try again, that maybe we could be a family again. I just wanted to see if there was a chance for us to work things out for his sake. And what did you decide? Another long pause. I don't know. It's complicated. No, it's not, I said firmly. You made your choice the moment you decided to lie to me about what this break was really about. You chose them over me, and that's fine. But don't expect me to sit around waiting while you figure out the logistics. Leland, please. Can we talk about this? Can I come home? This isn't your home anymore, Velma. You made that clear when you chose to go play house with your ex-husband instead of working on your marriage with your actual husband. But I love you, she whispered. No, you don't. You love the idea of having a backup plan in case things don't work out with Orville. But I'm not interested in being anyone's second choice. I hung up before she could respond, then immediately blocked her number. Whatever she had to say now, I didn't want to hear it. 3 months later, I was working late in the shop when Frank stopped by with divorce papers that had been delivered to his house by mistake. Velma had listed him as a reference years ago and apparently never updated her address with the lawyer. These are yours, he said, setting the envelope on my workbench. I opened them and skimmed through the legal language. She was asking for half of everything, including the business I'd built from nothing before I'd ever met her. It was exactly what I'd expected from someone who'd already shown she was comfortable taking things that didn't belong to her. You gonna fight it? Frank asked. Don't need to, I replied, setting the papers aside. My lawyer already has documentation of her affair. She'll be lucky to get anything beyond her personal belongings. The truth was, I didn't care about the money anymore. The business was doing better than ever. Word had gotten around about my work, and I had a waiting list of collectors wanting their timepieces restored. I'd even hired an apprentice, a young woman named Sarah, who had a natural talent for the delicate work. How are you doing with all this? Frank asked, settling into his usual chair. Better than I expected, I admitted. Turns out being alone is a lot more peaceful than being with someone who doesn't want to be there. Frank nodded knowingly. You ever think about dating again? Maybe someday. But right now, I'm focusing on building something that can't walk away when things get complicated. I gestured around the shop, which I'd expanded and updated with new equipment. The work gave me purpose, satisfaction in a way that my marriage never had. Every watch I restored was a small victory, a broken thing made whole again. Speaking of which, Frank said, pulling out his phone, my cousin just inherited her grandfather's pocket watch collection. She's looking for someone to evaluate them. Send her my way. After Frank left, I stayed in the shop for another hour, working on a 1960s submariner that had been neglected for decades. As I carefully cleaned each component, I thought about the lesson it represented. Sometimes things break beyond repair, and sometimes they just need the right person to give them the attention they deserve. I'd learned the difference, finally. And more importantly, I'd learned that I deserved better than someone who saw me as a temporary solution to her problems. The watch in my hands began keeping perfect time again, its steady rhythm filling the quiet shop. Some things, when treated with respect and care, could last forever. Others were never meant to last at all.